Ladies and gentlemen, we have lots of developments with this Middle East conflict. It looks like the United States is preparing to step into this conflict today. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. I have the latest developments for you on that front, but no, that's not why stocks are selling off today. Maybe partially, but it doesn't matter. The Middle East does not matter unless it affects energy. Because higher energy prices mean weaker economic activity, less money for people to spend, higher recessionary risks. Okay. Iran produces oil, but they only produce about 2% of the world's supply daily. So it's really about the Strait of Hormuz. I don't think Iran can or will choke that off. This conflict would be about regime change. The leader of Iran would be killed in that scenario. I don't think he wants to be killed. Okay. So this is not a big negative, like scary catalyst in my view, unless something with the Strait of Hormuz comes up, which I don't think it will. Okay. What this really has to do with is the Fed tomorrow and the weaker than expected data today. We'll get into that, but I think the Fed is going to be a lot more dovish tomorrow than people expect. Nick Timmerhouse today wrote on X that if it were not for the threat of higher inflation, the Fed would be preparing to cut rates right now. Okay. Now, it's going to hurt the Fed's credibility if they try to, bring up the threat of inflation. The Fed's going to be a lot more dovish tomorrow than expected because we've had 2 months of inflation numbers since Liberation Day, and we have not seen any inflation. People forget a lot of the times credibility works both ways. Whether you were dovish, too dovish before 2021's inflation, and then you got inflation, boom, that hurts credibility. Or if you're too hawkish or too bearish and you don't get inflation, that also hurts Fed credibility. And Wall Street doesn't believe the Fed is going to be bullish tomorrow or dovish tomorrow. I actually think it's going to be the catalyst to send markets to new all-time highs. Is a more dovish than expected Fed. A Fed that is not as worried about inflation and tariff-induced inflation. After all, I expected today was going to be a red day. Take a listen to what I said on Sunday. The Middle East, or at least not getting worse from an economics perspective, I think that gives the markets room to bounce in the beginning of the week. Tuesday could be a red day, though, before the Fed, because Wall Street's so negative around, what the Fed's going to say. I think Wall Street's going to be wrong. I think the Fed's going to be a lot more dovish than we think. And get in line with kind of what the markets are pricing in for 2 cuts this year, with maybe optionality to cut more than that. I do think tomorrow will set the stage for new all-time highs in markets over the coming days. Now, let me know your thoughts on that down below in the comment section. But first, before we get into all of this key information, if you guys want to come trade with us live in real time, every time I make trades, I send out alerts. Check out that link down below in the trading community. And yes, we trade options, we trade crypto, we buy stocks for the long term from time to time as well. But what I'm really looking to do, and what I have been doing over the last 6 months, year or so, is finding those smaller companies that are underlooked and underappreciated. In the last 6 months, it was APLD. Bought that stock at $3. It went up to $15. It was Novartis Semiconductors. Bought that in the $2 range. It went up to $7, $8-ish. Nebius. Bought that at $17. It went up to $55. Okay. Those are the kind of opportunities that I am seeking to find. They are out there. They're just not covered by analysts. Like, for an example, NVIDIA. You will never find something about NVIDIA that Wall Street does not already know. It has way too many analysts that cover it, way too many people that invest in it. What is known is known, okay? But with a company that's $1 billion, $2 billion, that maybe has 1 to 3 analysts covering it, that's where you can find the hidden gems. That's where you can find a company that Wall Street doesn't know about. In fact, we've actually found a couple of them in just the last week or two. and invested in them. Today, I actually bought another almost $5,000 worth of one specific gene editing company that nobody knows about. That, wow, has some price targets coming out from analysts in the $50 range. The stock's a $9 stock. Yeah. Phase 3 trial data coming out later this year. Yeah, that's an opportunity if I ever seen one. Check out that link down below in the description of this video. Come join us. And with that, let's get started. And another good reason you could point towards the Fed maybe looking to cut rates, although they're not going to, is retail sales month over month. Retail sales this morning, month over month for May, came in at negative 0.9%. The last month was revised down from positive 0.1% to negative 0.1%. And the estimate for today's number was negative 0.7%. I thought we would come in a little bit better than that. We did not. So it doesn't look great. The lots of subcomponent data as well. But if you look at retail sales excluding autos, which is what a lot of people look at to strip out autos, you had negative 0.3%. The estimate was positive 0.1%. So kind of across the board, some bad numbers today from retail sales. Business inventories came in at 0%. Industrial production month over month came in at negative 0.2%. Estimate was positive 0.1%. So literally everything came in worse than expected. The NAHB housing market index also came in at 32. The forecast was 37. So just, yeah, not a great day today for economic data, which again, suggests the Fed should be cutting rates right now. But if we look at what the futures market is pricing for tomorrow, there's a 97.9% chance of no cut. There's a 2.1% chance of a cut. Historically, the Fed does what the markets price in. So the Fed's not going to be cutting rates tomorrow. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the next video, but there is zero chance of a rate cut tomorrow. Even for July 30th, there's an 85.5% chance of no cut and a 14.4% chance of a cut. This is where I think some of the bullishness could come tomorrow. Instead of the first cut or the next cut being priced in for September, we may price that in for July. Okay, these odds being at 85.5% for no cut, for a pause in July, could fall dramatically tomorrow. EU's Foreign Minister Kallas says we cannot be lenient when Iran accelerates its nuclear program. EU's Foreign Minister Kallas says U.S. involvement in Iran's situation risks a broader conflict. Israeli military official says Israel struck dozens of targets tied to Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program overnight. And the Israeli military official says Iranian military leadership is on the run. He also says we do not want to cause any nuclear disasters with our strikes on Iran. And China's president urges avoiding further escalation of Mideast tension. Israel's defense minister says that Israel is not in talks with Iran. And Israel will attack significant targets in Tehran today. China's President Xi says there are no winners in tariff wars and trade wars. Israeli defense minister says Iran's nuclear facility in Fordow is an issue that of course will be addressed. The IAEA has identified additional elements that indicate direct impacts on the underground enrichment holes at Natanz. They say there are no changes to report at Esfahan and Fordow. Donald Trump says that he has not reached out to Iran for peace talks, and he says he's not too much in the mood to negotiate with Iran. German Chancellor tells broadcaster ARD expect a deal with the U.S. in tariff dispute before summer's end. Germany's chancellor says if Iran does not back down, then complete destruction of the Iranian nuclear program is on the agenda, which Israel cannot achieve alone. That is because Israel does not have those bunker buster bombs, the bombs that, we were using to try to take out bin Laden back in the day, like that can penetrate in mountains and break down caves. And those are the weapons that would need to be used to take out some of those nuclear enrichment facilities. UK's Prime Minister Starmer says, I have no doubt that Trump will stay out of the Iran-Israel conflict. But Donald Trump says on True Social, we now have complete and total control over the skies over Iran. Iran had a good sky trackers and other defensive equipment and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived and manufactured, quote, stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says Trump may take further action against the Iran nuclear program. The Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs says the mission in Iran is nearly complete. And Israeli media says the army will complete the mission in Iran within 2 weeks at most. And U.S. Treasury Secretary Besson is serving as Trump's stand-in at the G7 after Trump's exit. And 4 U.S. military aircrafts have been spotted over the eastern Mediterranean amid rising Israel-Iran tensions. All are aerial refueling planes, probably supporting long-range strikes or surveillance missions in the region. And U.S. military is moving fighter jets to the Middle East amid extending deployments of warplanes to bolster defenses amid Israel-Iran conflict, a U.S. official tells Reuters. And apparently Israel has launched a cyber war against Iran's digital infrastructure. Donald Trump also posted on True Social, quote, we know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out, kill, at least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then Donald Trump posted on True Social, unconditional surrender, at 10:22 in the morning today. And on a completely different note, the Supreme Court asked to hear a challenge to Trump's global tariffs. The Pentagon is playing its role in providing options if diplomacy with Iran fails. And B-52 bombers are currently stationed on Diego Garcia Island in the Indian Ocean, informed sources at the Pentagon tell Al Jazeera. Which, as you can see here, that is this little remote island here. Okay. Way the hell down here. Like right here. In the middle of literally nowhere. But, I mean, suggestive by the U.S. military could be used to reach Iran. Germany's chancellor says the U.S. will decide today whether to join the Iran conflict. So, like, by 7, 8 o'clock tonight, you could be getting some action. And Trump's national security team will meet at 1 p.m. today. U.S. officials say that Trump is seriously considering a strike on Iran. And it says here, Trump is seriously considering joining the war on Iran and launching a strike against its nuclear facilities. And that is obviously something the markets don't like to hear. But guys, it doesn't matter from a financial perspective. Wall Street could care less if America joined the conflict. Just what does that do to energy prices? Okay. Iran, not a huge producer of oil. They produce less than 2% of the world's supply. And obviously, if that were to be shut down, that's not like positive. But 2% of the world's supply, not terrible. The Strait of Hormuz controls 20-30% of the world's oil supply that flows through it. That is the bigger issue. Now, I don't think Iran's in a position where they can cut that off. If they tried to, I mean, that would just be disastrous for their regime, furthermore than just nuclear facilities. So, logically speaking, I don't think this is really an event for markets. I think partially markets are selling off today because of fear of the Middle East conflict. Who cares? That doesn't matter for markets. But I think a lot of it also has to do with the Fed tomorrow. There's a lot of repositioning. There's a lot of money sloshing around out there that is getting ready for the Fed tomorrow. And a lot of people are bearish on the Fed. A lot of people think the Fed's going to be hawkish. I don't. I think the Fed is going to be on the dovish side. As I've said before, if 0 is a super dove and 10 is like super hawk, I think Wall Street's at like a 7 for tomorrow's Fed meeting. Like, the Fed's going to be focused on inflation, that we could see inflation spike again, blah, blah, blah. And I think in reality, the Fed's going to be at like a 4 or 4.5. If neutral is 5, the Fed's going to be on the dovish side. They're not going to be like super dove, but they're going to be dovish. The Fed's going to say, hey, if we don't see inflation by the July meeting, we could cut rates at the next meeting. That's along the lines of the language I think we're going to hear. Okay? So I find it very hard to believe that we're going to be bearishly surprised by anything the Fed says tomorrow, because Wall Street is already bearish on the path of Fed cuts. Like a lot of major banks are not expecting any cuts this year at all. Like, we're already negative on the Fed tomorrow. I think it's going to be a positive surprise to markets. But we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next video. Even Nick Timmerhouse says that if it weren't for, the Fed's fears of inflation, the Fed would be cutting rates right now. The federal funds rate's 4.5%. PCE is 2.5%. That is way more restrictive than you have to be. Now, with that said, the percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average at 66.35%. So again, still on the higher side, but coming back down. The CNN Fear and Greed Index today coming in at 58, which is almost back in neutral territory. Technically still in greed, but almost in neutral. Market momentum is fear, stock price strength is greed, stock price breadth, extreme greed, put and call options greed, market volatility is neutral, safe haven demand is greed, junk bond demand currently neutral. And again, the AI Investor Sentiment Survey finally shows more bullish investors than bearish investors. Thursday markets are closed. This survey comes out Thursday morning. So we'll see if it comes out tomorrow or if it comes out on Friday, or maybe if it still comes out on Thursday, but markets are closed. So I really do think this Middle East situation is not much of a catalyst for markets in the current form that it is, unless it's some kind of nuclear disaster or something, unless Iran tries to cut off the Strait of Hormuz, which I don't think they can. Like, this Middle East situation is not a problem for markets at this point. I think the Fed tomorrow is probably what is putting a lot of pressure on stocks. The uncertainty about what the Fed could say or do, what the dot plot says. And we'll talk about this more in the next video, specifically the dot plot. But I don't think we have anything to worry about. The Fed back March 19th already front ran the expectations around tariffs. They priced in more inflation, they priced in higher unemployment and weaker growth. I mean, we haven't seen those things. Yeah, sure, we had weaker growth in Q1, but Q2 GDP looks fine. PCE, we haven't seen PCE rise. Like, to raise your targets again, I think would really hurt the Fed's credibility. So let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.